You've seen the movie. You know the parties, the yachts, the sheer insanity. But how did Jordan Belfort actually make all that money? It wasn't just slick salesmanship. Today, we're diving deep into the real scam behind the Wolf of Wall Street. This is the story of Stratton Oakmont, a name that became synonymous with greed and corruption on an epic scale. It all started with a simple idea, one that sounds almost legitimate. Penny stocks. Because they're so cheap, you can buy a massive number of shares for a relatively small investment. Belfort and his crew didn't just sell these stocks. They created a machine designed to manipulate their prices and fleeced unsuspecting investors. Their strategy was a classic, yet devastatingly effective pump-and-dump scheme. First, the pump. Stratton Oakmont, often through Belfort himself or his partners, would secretly buy huge stakes in a worthless penny stock company. Sometimes, they even owned the company outright through secret shell corporations. They'd acquire millions of shares for fractions of a cent. This was phase one. Accumulate a controlling position before anyone else knew what was happening. With their shares secured, they initiated phase two. The pump. This is where the boiler room came in. Belfort trained an army of young, aggressive brokers to cold call thousands of people. He didn't just teach them to sell, he gave them meticulously crafted scripts designed to create a sense of insane urgency and FOMO, the fear of missing out. These weren't investment recommendations. They were high-pressure sales tactics. The brokers would lie. Plain and simple. They'd claim to have inside information, saying a small shoe company was about to sign a massive government contract, or a tech startup was on the verge of a revolutionary breakthrough. They would create a completely false narrative around these junk companies, painting them as the next Apple or Microsoft. The script was key. It had answers for every objection. Is it risky? The only risk is not getting in now. Let me think about it. Sorry, by the time you think, this opportunity will be gone. I have 5 other guys on the line who will take your shares right now. It was relentless psychological warfare, as thousands of regular investors, doctors, lawyers, small business owners started buying in. The demand for the stock would artificially skyrocket. Remember basic economics? High demand, limited supply. The price would shoot up. A stock they bought for 10 cents might suddenly be trading for $1, then 2, then 5. The early investors who got in on the broker's tip would see their accounts balloon. They'd feel like geniuses. They'd tell their friends. This created even more hype, driving the price even higher. This was the magic of the pump. Belfort and his inner circle were watching the stock price climb, knowing it was all built on a foundation of lies. Then came the most crucial part of the scam. Phase 3, the dump. Once the stock price reached its peak, inflated by all the manufactured hype and retail buying, Belfort and his partners would sell all of their shares at once. They would dump their entire massive position onto the market. The sudden flood of millions of shares for sale would instantly overwhelm the demand. The price would crater. It was a complete wipeout. The investors who bought in on the hype were left holding worthless stock. Their life savings, their retirement funds, gone. Meanwhile, Jordan Belfort and his crew at Stratton Oakmont walked away with millions in pure profit. They bought 4 pennies, and thanks to the investors they duped, they sold $4. It was a perfect predatory wealth transfer machine. One of the most famous examples was the IPO, or initial public offering, for Steve Madden shoes. You've probably heard of the brand. Stratton Oakmont took the company public. But what the public didn't know was that Belfort and his friends secretly owned a huge, illegal portion of the pre-IPO stock. They used friends and relatives as rat holes, or secret holders, to bypass regulations that limited how much stock they could own. When Steve Madden went public, Stratton's brokers went into a frenzy, pushing the stock hard. The price soared. Investors thought they were getting in on the ground floor of a hot new fashion company. But behind the scenes, Belfort was orchestrating the pump. Once the price was high enough, he and his cronies dumped their secret shares, making over $20 million in a matter of hours, while regular investors were left holding the bag as the price collapsed. So how did they get away with it for so long? 3 reasons. intimidation, deception, and lifestyle. They would intimidate smaller firms and regulators. They would use complex networks of offshore accounts in places like Switzerland to hide their money, making it incredibly difficult for investigators to trace. And finally, the extravagant lifestyle itself was a tool. The parties, the cars, the yachts, it was all part of the marketing. It made the brokers hungrier, and it made potential clients believe they were dealing with winners. It created an illusion of legitimacy and success that masked the rotten core of the business. Of course, it couldn't last. The sheer scale of the fraud eventually caught the attention of the FBI, and as the investigation closed in, the house of cards began to collapse. Belfort was eventually arrested and faced the consequences. He was ordered to pay back over $110 million in restitution to the more than 1,500 victims of his schemes. The story of the Wolf of Wall Street is a wild ride, but it's crucial to remember the real victims who lost everything. It serves as a powerful cautionary tale about the dangers of greed and the age-old warning: if it sounds too good to be true, it almost certainly is. Thanks for watching our breakdown of the Wolf of Wall Street scam. If you found this interesting, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the most fascinating stories from the world of finance and beyond. We'll see you in the next video.